right, so we are live for our latest live stream episode on mental health during the coronavirus epidemic. And today we're going to be talking specifically about PDA, Pathological Demand Avoidance. And we have Tigger Pritchard, who is an expert in this area. And we're honored to have you on, Tigger. Thank you so much for joining. It's great to have you on.
Thank you. I'm an expert that's still learning.
Yes,
and I've got to still learn because it's so fluid and so changing out there. But thank you so much for asking me to take part in this.
No. You're welcome, and thanks for making the time. And James, it's great to see you again. How are you doing, James?
Hi there. Yeah, we're all right, thank you.
Oh, great. All right, so so today, as I said, we're going to be talking about something that's called, in inverted commas, pathological demand avoidance. Perhaps we'll talk about what it all means according to your perspective, maybe a little bit, Tigger. But first, if you don't mind... Oh, sorry, I was just going to ask if you don't mind just perhaps introducing yourself and the work that you do and that sort of thing.
Hello, everybody. Tigger is a real name. I changed it about 23 years ago because people called me Tigger for ages, and I thought, I'm just going to change my name. I was born very early on. Parents thought I was going to die. They gave me a birth name I didn't like, and with their blessing, eventually I changed it. So hello. I've worked primarily with awesome individuals and professionals for the past 30 odd years, primarily in Cornwall. And it's been early years and respite and care management and education and college-based stuff. And for all that time, I've loved what I did. I didn't do very well at school. I didn't like school at all. I'm not academically orientated. I don't like writing. I wasn't ever had any idea what career I do, but I just fell into this world and felt like it fitted like a hand in a glove, as the saying goes. I felt at home in doing what I was doing, and I loved it. So I finished in education. I used to run an area at Truro College in Cornwall, which was the only area at that time, and I think still is, for awesome individuals with communication issues and so on and so forth. From a 16+ setting, I worked a lot of the specialist schools in the county and worked really hard. Since then, went freelance and just taught and worked with people and did conferences and training, worked with families. The family work started to get a lot more, and I really liked that. I think I say to people I have a neurologically interesting brain. So sometimes I go into situations and I go, yeah, I can get that, I can understand that, I can smell that, I can taste that, I can hear that, I can see that. And that's always worked well over the years. And I think all that 30 years of experience was there, learning from a huge variety of individuals and professionals. And then I suddenly realized that maybe I think a bit differently. Retroactively, I think there are definitely family members I've got that are awesomely on the spectrum, and I thought that's why I fit. I then became involved with the National Autistic Society, first as the vice chair and then the chair in the county of Cornwall. And basically, if I have a passion in life, it's the world of autism. I'm learning, I'm growing, I'm thinking, I'm changing, I'm reforming ideas all the time because the world is so fluid. I love what I do. And so I kind of wear two hats. I say there's a professional hat, which is what the Tiggertraining hat is, but also do a lot of work with the National Autistic Society. It brings me into contact with families, individuals. I need that. I need to be doing stuff, especially at this moment in time. So it's 30 odd years in my life, but I think I get it personally a lot. I think there's a lot of things I understand and see. I have sensory issues that I cope with, noise levels, banging doors, I've mentioned already before we got on, and some other stuff. So I think... And it's a passion. It's just a passion. I love what I do, and I'm lucky to be able to do what I do in this awesome autism world.
That's great, and sounds like you're having an enormous impact on the autistic and wider autism community. And I think it's particularly great in your area in Cornwall that you're really there, being supportive, doing what you do. Because obviously, as we talked just before we came on about the cuts in services in Cornwall. So that's particularly problematic. And so, you doing what you're doing is particularly impactful, I'm sure, given that.
I'm lucky that there's a lot of good people down here in Cornwall as well. There's a lot of good individuals, professionals, awesome groups of individuals fighting for rights, developing things as well. There's kind of a really good team down here. and working a lot where possible with local professionals and the county authorities and so on to really build up what's going on in this county. There's some great things going on, but like most counties, there's a lot more we need to do to get it right, really.
Yeah. So, so as I said at the outset, we're talking about PDA and its sort of intersection with mental health and this whole situation. We've had a couple of questions about this general area in past live streams. So I do think it is something that a lot of people are thinking about, maybe thinking about it without realizing they're thinking about it, perhaps. But maybe if we start off first with, perhaps a sort of explanation as to what, in your mind, PDA is. I mean, perhaps give us a sort of your overview.
I think it's new. I think I'll explain my journey with PDA. I think which kind of fills it out a bit. Really, it's fairly new in this world of autism. Many years ago at Truro College, I worked with an individual, and it was said, hey, there's a young man we're going to work with, and he's a young man who's been excluded from school, and he's had a lot of issues. And I just, I was their autism guys. They went, go and work with Tigger. And I remember seeing my boss and going, hey, well, this is autism, but, and I went, there's something I'm not getting here. So there's autism here, but there's something else I can't quite see or smell or put my finger on, as the sayings go. And I did all the usual stuff of strategies and timetabling and aids that he would work and so on. And it didn't. It all went wrong. And he got very anxious and very stressed. And I thought to myself, well, hang on a minute. This is autism, but there's an anxiety level here that I've never seen before. There was ways of communicating that to really readily change and adapt, which I hadn't thought of before. And I remember actually writing to the centre in Nottingham, where Elizabeth Newson had worked, and went, hi, I'd just been told by a mother, I don't know what PDA was. It was so early on. It was in the days of early Google, I think. And when I put PDA in, it came with personal digital assistant. There was nothing on the internet, or was it public displays of affection? And there was nothing there. So they actually sent me through the post. And I wish I'd kept it. I wish I'd kept it for posterity. They sent me through a post document that said, this is PDA. And I read it and I went, wow, okay, this is PDA. And I was like fascinated by it. And I've made some notes to refer to, forgive me. And it was that I remember reading those words, pathological demand avoidance, and thinking to myself, oh my God, I say to people, when you hear pathological, and there's a lot of debate about that as the term in the world, what does it mean? It makes you think of, wow, okay, pathological, oh my God, and then demand and avoidance. And the more I read into it, and the more I learned from that awesome teacher I had. So that first student I worked with, who was then 17 at the time, it's a while ago now, it was an incredible teacher for me. And then researching, there was very little out there at the time, and then realizing that my usual approaches to that world of autism were not going to work because they were demand laden. They were laden with, you must do, we are going to do, I expect you to. And if somebody has a demand avoidance, that's the last thing you want to do. So I often say to people, PDA, pathological demand avoidance. It sounds a scary kind of label or signpost for someone to have. And what I like is I break it down into, and I say, okay, pathological sounds scary. And there is a lot of debate in the PDA world at the moment whether or not that's a title that will stay. But it's so young. You're looking at the 80s when people realized this was an add-on, a subset to that autism spectrum. And really, the pathological bit to me describes the fact that it is something, the actions that that person displays, the anxiety levels they go through are completely and utterly beyond their control. This isn't a power game. This isn't somebody being, forgive my terminology, bloody minded for the sake of it, or being better than anybody else, or just not wanting to do anything because they want to be whatever. Or naughtiness at all, nothing at all. It is something that is completely and utterly beyond that person's control. And devastating to them, just as much as it is to individuals around them. And the demand bit, I often say to people, it's any demand that is out there. And this is what gets interesting, I think, because when I often work with people, I say, look, let's do a demand cup or mug or chart, whatever you want to call it. And I say, look at how many demands you're placing upon the individual from the minute they wake up. Indirect demands, the sun coming up is a demand. Do you know what I mean? The toothbrush sitting in the cup in the bathroom is a demand. The plate on the table is a demand, and you can go on forever. And those demands are piling up. And then, as my example normally goes, someone goes to school, boom, even more. And then the avoidance bit is, I cannot do this. I cannot do this. It's not that I don't want to. It's not that I'm naughty. It's not that it's a power game. It is totally and utterly, I can't do this. I'd love to. I think I can. I might have done it the other day, but I cannot do it now. And that level of anxiety is something that I think is incredible, petrifying in some ways for so many individuals. For those of individuals who don't get that level of anxiety, it's difficult to understand, I think. What I often do with people sometimes is I say, I stop. If I'm doing a presentation, I'll say, oh, look, I'm really bored now. Tell you what, under your chairs are some maths questions. There's a piece of paper with maths questions on them. Could you please stand up? I'll call one person out at a time, bring you to the front of where I am, be it a conference or a training session, and ask you out loud to go through these maths questions. And some people go, no, there's no way I'm doing that, mate. And then I go back and I say, do you feel like you have any control over the level of anxiety? Then most people go, no. You occasionally get people that go, I love maths, which is fair. But on the whole, people go, no, it just came out of nowhere. And that, I think, sometimes gives us a glimpse into what PDA actually is. It's anxiety-ridden. It's boom, incredibly. And it's a demand. It's any demand that can be there during the day. And I think one of the hardest things is it's not recognized in the manuals. So a lot of people can dismiss it as a naughty child or bad parenting, and that's certainly wrong. But it's growing across the globe incredibly at this moment in time and over the past several years, certainly. But it's very misunderstood. But does it exist? God, yeah, it does. And there's a huge amount of literature and resources out there. But I go back to that first incident. I remember going back to my line manager and saying, this is autism, but... And I've heard that so many times where parents or an individual professional has gone, hey, this is autism, but... So you have that initial diagnosis there, that just identification, and then boom, there's that something else. And it is the demand issue, which can, as I said, be very, very often misunderstood by huge amounts of individuals, but certainly by a lot of professionals, educators certainly, will often misunderstand what's going on, sadly.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I often think of it as a sort of, this is just my own kind of sort of conceptualization of it, and it could be completely wrong, but I often sort of see it as, we all have sort of internal batteries when it comes to coping with demands, right? And I wake up in the morning and I'm at 100%, and as I go through, I try and sort of make sure I haven't gone to 0%, by the time I'm at 6 o'clock or whatever. I try and see it through. But I often see sort of, people that particularly struggle with this, with coping with demands, I suppose, and the anxiety, as you said, that then really manifests and takes control and then further drains that battery, so to speak. They're unfortunately going to be, their batteries are often going to be draining much quicker, isn't it? I mean, that's the way I sort of envisage it.
And what gets me is it can go like that.
Yeah,
it can go from being just about okay to boom.
Yeah,
and that I think is what some people describe as like the Jekyll and Hyde moment, when it's just boom, it's just happened.
Yeah, but I think, from what you're saying, it sounds like the anxiety is really a sort of key part of this. It's all key, isn't it? It's all interconnected. But when the anxiety goes up, then the ability, I suppose, to cope and manage in a sort of healthy way the situation becomes much harder, right? So the anxiety sort of really sort of compounds things. But again, I'm not an expert in this particular area, but I often think, I get a lot of people asking me about this a lot of the time, and I often think that actually a lot of the demands that are being avoided are often totally reasonable when you break it down. Not all. If you break it down, if for example you've got sensory issues, and you're going to, you're expecting either on sort of conscious or subconscious level that you're going to be going into a sort of an environment that's going to really, be challenging for your sensory world, then you're going to want to avoid that demand, right?
Yeah.
So I think often, I mean, obviously, I'd love to hear your view of it, but often I always think, well, actually, when you break it down, when you look at it, when you actually do this sort of investigatory work, a lot of the avoidance that people do is actually quite reasonable. Do you know what I mean? When you like break it down, you look at what's going on. It might not be immediately clear, but if you do enough sort of a forensic assessment, you really go at it, then sometimes it is quite clear, and it only comes after you really sort of assess it with depth. Actually, it was a rational demand avoidance, you might call it.
Well, I think in some areas you can. I think you mentioned something else here which I want to bring in as well, which is the sensory processing issues. And so many individuals forget that as being an anxiety-laden part of somebody's life. Again, individuals, and I do go a lot of my works in education establishments where they forget about, the stuff we know so well, the fluorescent tubes, the background noises, the clutter on the walls, the too much communication going on, the smells, the tastes, and tactile stuff from the environment, and so on. So I often, as I said before, use a representation of that anxiety mug linked to a demand mug. There's kinds of a sensory mug as well, if I can use those references. But at the same time, you're right. The overload is a demand of such as, do you want to go and sit over there? Well, there's all this other stuff going on as well. I've had it. Please don't put that pressure upon me. It's just another indicator of the anxiety twinned with everything else in terms of, the awesome autism brain, the PDA aspects, and also the sensory issues as well. And you're right. I often say to people, just look at your normal interactions with your family, let's say, or the people around you. And how often during those days does somebody ask you to do something and there's a little knee-jerk inside your head? What they're asking you to do is reasonable. Oh, could you just move the chair over here? I just moved it. Yeah. Oh, yeah, okay, I'll go and do it. Yeah. Bring the plate to the kid. Well, I was going to. That kind of jazz, yeah. And some people talk about that, but it's that big picture where, most individuals, there's so much more going on. And the sensory bit to me is really important because it has such an impact on stress levels, anxiety levels, mental health issues, and so on for lots of individuals. And then you twin that with the fact that I'm out of control. That's very complex for a lot of people out there.
So when it comes to the whole COVID-19 situation, I mean, obviously the whole game is turned upside down, right? I mean, there are new different types of demands. Presumably there are the coping strategies and structures people had in place to manage demands and so forth. That's all gone upside down, right? So would you agree that, it's a particularly difficult time for people that, do struggle with
very, 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 very difficult because you can't leave your house apart from for one form of exercise? That's a massive demand.
Yeah.
And as we discussed before, if I need to get out the house to go to a certain place to reduce my anxieties because I like to go there, and it's I mean, as I'm sure you have and other people listening have as well, we've all had to face huge amounts of stress placed upon us in the past 3 or so weeks that we weren't expecting to have at all. So if you've got somebody that all of a sudden there is a massive you cannot do, you must do. And for somebody with extreme demand avoidance, that is very, very confusing, very threatening, hugely laden with anxiety. So for those individuals and the families around them, it's extremely complex times. And you add on to that, as we mentioned, the sensory world, the change of routines that would have been user-friendly for some individuals, the change of their usual habitats they go to reduce anxiety and so on and so forth. There are a lot of people out there across the whole of the autism world and culture, PDA culture, etc., that are really finding this situation difficult, individuals and families alike. So it is very, very stressful for a lot of individuals and families out there.
Yeah. Yeah, my heart goes out to all of them, really. I can't imagine. It must be extremely difficult. So have you got any sort of, I suppose a lot of people are going to be very keen to hear your tips or your recommendations on coping, in particular, that minimizing of the anxiety and all of that sort of side of things?
They're going to be home. Usually, I hope they're going to be at home with people around them that know and love them, that know brilliantly the sensory issues on what works and what doesn't work. I mean, usually when I'm working with professionals that may not have come across PDA before, I talk about how we have to change our language, how we have to change our almost method of demand. If we're trying to get through an educational week, a lesson, or an activity, and so on. So one thing that is apparent at the moment, and there is some amazing stuff on the PDA Society website. They are, from my perspective, the place to go to. They've got some great videos, some amazing resources, and some very up-to-date current stuff around resources and strategies for home life. But it's, first of all, you know your son or daughter, you know the person you're living with, and you know what works and what doesn't work. Their whole world, as yours, has been turned up and down. So you're anxious, they're anxious as well, and there's an issue there where you could, to a certain degree, feed that anxiety off each other. So as well as looking after the person, the PDA, you also got to look after yourself as a parent or family member to make sure you don't get stressed. And it may be that, it may be that, if I may use the example of IT time or Facebook or gaming, it may be all of a sudden for a period of time when we're only 3 weeks in, that has to increase if it's a strategy that somebody uses. It may be that you have to be very careful of any new demands. I mean, there's lots of jokes around at the moment about what day of the week is it. And I've actually been asking, what day is it today? It just feels like a Sunday.
Yeah.
And a Sunday for a lot of people could be quite a day of family activities and low arousal and low demand and so on. But that's all changed to a certain degree because we cannot leave the house. We cannot leave the environment we're in. So I think it depends upon the person's level of in terms of communication and age and understanding and so on. But definitely be honest. You're as anxious in some ways and as concerned about what's happening as they're going to be. But I do think sometimes, the individual, though, that honesty is the best policy. And it could be with that honesty and with that something like, shall we both research what's going on? And then to a certain degree, then when you've got that directiveness, a person can see that it's coming from a government, a big organizational body, and it might be they can cope with that demand. Whereas if it was just coming from you as an individual or parent, they might not cope with it so well. So it's not you saying, oi, this has to happen. It's a bigger agency saying it's going to happen. But I think the honesty is really important. And accepting the fact that at this moment in time, early on, 3 weeks in, whatever the individual that you live with does to stay calm, to self-regulate, let them do it. If all of a sudden, I mean, I'm here with 2 teenagers, and their screen time has gone like that. Yeah, we've all of a sudden got Netflix and Disney and now TV, their special 7-day offers, whatever. Yeah, that's the kind of thing you're doing because you're trying to relax, you're trying to keep yourself calm. That's going to happen too. So I think that a negotiation to a certain degree, a self-exploration of what's going on, so that if the person's able to, they can see the bigger picture. They can understand why it's happening, and it isn't just a parent putting down a new set of rules. It's actually that we all have to go through. And I've spoken to someone today, and he's been really all over the internet. His knowledge of the situation is far better than mine, but he's calmer because of the research he's done, and his situation with the family he's with is calmer because he's been able to do that. They basically said, look, we don't know what's going on. Can you help us? And he went, yeah, I will. Straight on the internet. He loves it. Boom. And that reduced his anxiety levels incredibly, as with the people around him. But excuse my throat. You've got issues around, for most individuals, their home is a very safe place. So they're going to have areas they could go to, perhaps maybe areas where there are areas that are from a sensory issue, where they've got a low arousal area, or an area they go to where they've got something they use to calm and relax and so on. I do think that there's a lot of debate about having some kind of structure, because we need that. I think I've had to build structure up, I must confess, over the past 3 weeks. But I think, again, negotiating that structure is really cool. I think it's a lot about negotiation, a lot about being open. a lot about, and also again, PDA Society, there's some great resources. Look at the demands that are occurring during your natural day. Do they have to be there? Are they really that important?
Right.
There's a lovely bit on one of the PDA Society videos where it's something akin to, does your son or daughter have to wear shoes and socks inside the house? So if they don't have to, they don't have to.
Yeah.
When we're going out in the car, do they have to? Yeah, they do. You can see the subtlety there of changing the demand.
Right.
And that kind of stuff is really, really important. So you know your son or daughter. If you have online capabilities, go to somewhere that's amazing, like the PDA Society website. There are loads of resources and signposts, all the other stuff that's going around the globe in terms of accessing videos and exploration and stuff, and work you can do with children, individuals within a house, and negotiate stuff and look at the demands that are there during the day and think, what can I reduce? What can I reduce? But I still think we're in a transition time, if I can call it that. It's only 3 weeks in. It seems like an eternity to me.
Yeah.
Where I think we're about to hit with at least another 3 weeks to go, where they need to really sit down with individuals and to work out and to negotiate and to grow together. It's going to be really important, as I think a lot of families are going through at this moment in time.
I think, oh wow, that's so useful. Thank you. I definitely agree with everything you've said, including the idea that you know, think about what demands you can reduce, right, or just get rid of, or angle in a more healthy way, perhaps.
There's a document. Forgive me. There's a document. I'm trying to find it on here. It's on the PDA. Here we go. It's a priority rating chart. It's
great! Wow.
It's in a lovely book by Phil Christie, and Collaborative Approaches to Learning. It's by Phil Christie and Ruth Fiddler. It's on the PDA Society website. Get it. Amazon is still delivering. If you haven't got it, get it. It is superb. And in there's a priority rating chart, and it literally says to you what's important during the day. What's important during the day? If it's really important, it's almost non-negotiable. You've got to wear shoes when you go out. Do you have to sit at the breakfast table? Do you have to sit at the table and have breakfast with us all? No, you don't. In which case, then that reduces the demand. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
And I found that incredibly, incredibly important to all over the years. And I shared that page with everybody, and I say to people, get the book. It's fantastic. And you'll see the book on the PDA Society website. It is so, so amazing.
Oh, that sounds great.
It's a brilliant resource. But it makes you, as a parent, but I use it with educators and professionals as well, look at your day. And is it really, it's, somebody said to me, it's really choose your battles, isn't it? And I think, well, I don't like to use that term because it isn't a battle, but a lot of people get it when I say that.
Right.
It is a question of looking at what the demands are during the day and working out what's really important. And by looking at that, you reduce a huge amount of stress and demands for everybody across the board, which is so important.
Right. We've got a comment here from Celine Ryall. Thank you, Celine. She says, I'm letting my 7-year-old lead everything from the time he gets up, get showered, dressed, food, activity, the works. So that's a good idea, right, Tigger, to sort of let your child to some degree lead. Because that way it's a negotiation. Would you agree?
Yeah, I like the negotiation. I like the collaboration. The fact you work together as a team. So, and then one of the things you talk about, even the way you change how you ask someone to do something. How do you change your sentences can be so important to how it's then received and processed and taken on board. But that thing I said earlier on, where a parent went, look, I really don't know what's going on. I'm stuck. Can you help me? Yeah, I'll do that. I'll go online and sort it out. The person then self-educated, was in control. There were no demands, saw the bigger picture, and then went, okay. And for that one there, his demands are considerably reduced because he's taking a lead for the day. And I'm sure working with the family around him, being collaborative, negotiating stuff, and it's fantastic. And that's so, I keep saying we're only 3 weeks in. And I do think that, there's at least 3 weeks to go, and we've got to really start to get it right and reduce anxiety levels for everybody in a household. I mean, I'm really glad, we said earlier on, that the government saw, as many agencies said to them, this going out once a day isn't going to work. You need to go out with family members, perhaps parent, carers, and so on. And they changed those guidelines, thankfully, because that I know has made a huge amount of difference for so many people that I'm in contact with. But yeah, that sounds, for him it works. He's fantastic.
Yeah, agreed. James, I think you wanted to comment.
Yeah, that's fine. So I've had a few questions for you, Tigger, that I've been collecting. So first one is, does PDA show up at a particular age or this kind of thing? Because I know with my own son, he's got a lot of learning disabilities as well as autism and other additional needs as well. But he almost from a baby was in his developmental stages was kind of avoiding every single stage as almost as if it was painful, to as a baby to sit up and to do, so it was really difficult for me to teach him even the most basic things like trying different foods when he was a baby and things like that. Took much longer, than would normally do. So I was just wondering, is this does it really depend on the individual then?
I think most things depends on the individual. I think very early on, the most important people around a child, from my viewpoint, are the parents or parent, because they know, they understand, they see things that I'm not being too unkind here, professionals won't in a snapshot kind of a look at. So very often you might suddenly think, there's an issue of stress or anxiety when we are directly or indirectly ask someone to do something or tell someone to do something, whichever terminology you want to use. And I think sometimes parents go, he always likes his own way, or he always likes to be in control, or she's always, designing things that she's the center of attention. Yeah, some people saying that. And I think some individuals that I've spoken to and I've read over the years say that early on, they, like that, there's something here that's different. There's something here where, certainly, my son or daughter or individual likes to be in charge, doesn't like being directed or asked or told what to do. And that sometimes is an early indicator. And you look at it very early on. Some individuals, some parents will see that. But again, everybody is different. I think that you often get young individuals that may, you get that area of autism, and the identification there very often comes up first, and parents will see some issues around, the various situations there, interaction, communication, so on, that will be different from other children, and look at those. And then when they see those interactions happening, when perhaps there's a bit more communication going on, then all of a sudden, hang on a minute, you're taking control, you're leading it in a particular way. It might be in a great way, in a fantastic way, in a very productive way, in a fun way, but he or she is leading it. And that's very often what people see. But again, it's down to the individual. So very often there's that identification of autism there first. And then when perhaps a bit more social interaction is taking place, you think, well, hang on a minute, this person is brilliant at doing this, at doing that. I asked them to do this, and all of a sudden they're doing that, but that's a good idea. And all of a sudden you feel yourself being taken along. And then parents are sometimes retroactively back and they sort of themselves, okay, that person was deflecting the demand I was putting in place, or had thought of something even better, or had put it off till a later date, or negotiated something new with me. And they suddenly realized that from a very proactive way, that person is actually reducing the demands and therefore the stress that goes with them. So I'd say, early on, you've got that identification around autism, and then you've got issues around social interaction, like sharing of things, being asked things to do, as we said, so on and so forth, where people go, oh, hang on a minute, and they see there that something is different. I mean, at the end of the day, again, on the PDA Society website, there is a brilliant questionnaire, Extreme Demand Avoidance questionnaire, where there's a whole list of areas you'd look through as a parent. And it's a tick box kind of situation, and it raises such questions where you look at, again, I've got it here to read from it, where you look at certain situations and interactions that your son or daughter may have, and you think, right, okay, that seems to fit the box. And that in itself it's things like, this is taken from the PDA Society website on the Extreme Demand Avoidance questionnaire, which is fantastic, and I found that an incredibly important tool. obsessively resists and avoids ordinary demands and requests. You see that happening at a certain age when you're interacting, when you're asking a child to do certain things. Is driven for the need to be in charge. Those are my toys. I'm taking control of this. Hey, I'm going to design this play and put it on for everybody else that's around. Things like that. So early on, but I think when you've got a lot more social interaction happening, you suddenly begin to see that kind of like taking charge, taking control of, we can use those terms, but deflecting those demands in a very, very, very interesting way.
I also had a question about where PDA is combined with learning disabilities and with communication difficulties and things like that. It's often really, really complicated situations. So I know I had a friend whose son almost built up like a food aversion because of the natural parental instinct is that you must get your child to eat, and so therefore the child was resisting that, you know. So they found that the only way to deal with it was you know, to stop all the demands and just to basically leave some food on the table and see what happened. As soon as they did that, the child would eat, you know, started eating, and they were amazed.
It's interesting because, again, the table is the demand.
Yeah.
The chair by the table is in demand. Even, you know, going shopping and buying certain kind of food is a demand. It's a visual demand for some individuals, yeah? I remember working with somebody and their awesome son wouldn't go to bed, and they wanted him to go to bed. So there's an issue here, yeah? They wanted him to go to bed because that's what they thought, that's what they believed, or they perceived a normal child does. We're all different. We're all awesome. So we had a long discussion and realized that they kept calling the room his bedroom. There's a demand. There was a bed in there. That's a demand. Let alone the time of day and the routine for the day. They go up to that viewpoint and so on and so forth. And I remember saying to this awesome parent, listen, never call it a bedroom again. Take the bed out. Take the headboard out. Leave a nice quilt or sleeping bag or just blankets on the floor. And she was like, well, I can't do this. He needs to sleep in a bed. And I went, he needs to sleep, yeah. But the demands around that room, like eating, are huge. And thankfully, she was cool and she did all of that. And I remember getting the phone call saying, wow, he slept last night. And she went, he's not sleeping on a bed. Wow. I said, no, he's not sleeping on a bed, but he slept.
That's
and
amazing.
You're right, you know, even a plate in front of you. This is why I think about indirect demands. Like I said to people, and I've learned so much from great PDAs over the years. You know, demands sometimes we don't see. We think, can you sit down there? Can you go and do this? Now we're doing that. They're demands that we can see quite clearly sometimes, yeah? But a plate on a table, a particular kind of food, a chair in front of a table, a bed in a bedroom, they're demands as well. They're just indirect, and sometimes, you know, people don't see that. And you can remove the simplest of things, like just putting the plate on the table, putting the food there, and forgetting the routine and the demands that go with that routine. And somebody's like, yeah, I'll eat that. And, you know, and I do sometimes think a lot of demands, a lot of anxiety is put in place because we think I was brought up that you sit around a table to have your evening meal. I was brought up that you finish every bit on that plate, otherwise you don't get your dessert. Yeah. And sometimes then we place those upon our own children, and that's hugely anxiety laden and demand laden and so on. And so sometimes, without thinking ourselves, the way we design our environments or our structure of the day or our cultural expectations are demands. And we have to think box.
I was going to interesting you said cultural expectations. I was just going to sort of come in and say there's often a lot of cultural expectations, aren't there, about what's right, what's wrong. And that's a whole nother level of layered demands, isn't it? I mean, the point about having your child sit at the table, you know, and eat you know, family meal together, that's something, you know, I remember with my child, you know, that was, you know, expected culturally, you know, coming from, you know, I'm Greek, you know, and we're supposed to, you know, we sit together as a family, and my wife is Jewish, and so for her it was very important as well. And that was something that we always hoped we would do. It was something we envisaged, that we'd sit together, have our family meal, talk about what's been going on, and bond. But actually, we realized fairly quickly that was a big demand that he was actively, clearly avoiding. And in fact, that avoidance was actually, protecting his mental health, sort of, pushing, continuously pushing for him to do something that we expected to be, normal or desirable, just, wasn't really working for his well-being.
You link on top of that the sensory issues as well.
Yeah.
And it's just anxiety. You go into, there's a particular way of shopping, there's a particular way of going to school, there's a particular way of fitting into society. And I have learned and strongly believe that all those particular ways that that are forced upon us from a society viewpoint, cultural viewpoint, are actively adding to everybody's stress levels.
Yeah.
I worked with Sainsbury's in Truro several years ago to create a quiet time. Regularly, they were fantastic. And I remember I did a survey. Everybody that went to that shop went, it's so nice to come into an environment where the radios aren't blaring and the lights aren't really loud and the tunnel isn't going out for every 5 seconds or so. There's about a long day at work and it's really less stressful. And yet people are told to put the tellies on, to have the lights on really bright, and they're calling for things every so often to get people to buy stuff and so on and so forth. And it just raises anxiety levels. And we do, that, as I say, sitting at the table or that bit, but he must sleep in a bed. Why? You know what I mean? Why?
I think fully agree. And I think another layer to all this that makes it all a bit more challenging dealing with this is the sort of stigma that comes along with, not following through with expectations, culturally, so you got to handle that as well. There's always that sort of fight that, you want to put your child's well-being first, and you recognize, or whoever it is, you want to, or it might be yourself, put yourself first, protect your own well-being, avoid, that demand doesn't work for you. However, that then may come along with a lot of sort of negative judgments about, why isn't that person doing that? Or why should he get away with that? I don't want to do that, but blah, blah. And all of that makes it, I guess it's just another sort of level of demand.
It is. And it's really, the thing I get a lot is I sometimes, with families, I'll admit as well, and with organizations, you go in and some people get it and some don't. And that's where you get the naughty child bit. Right. I don't. And again, because it's not in those diagnostic manuals, identification manuals, it is, I don't believe it exists. She's just taking control all the time and not doing any work, and as soon as the other kids got onto it, they're going to do the same. And that happens a lot, and it's a process of education and understanding. And I know I've mentioned them before, but I adore them. Almost all the resources I have come from the PDA Society, because they are fantastic. They're videos, they're resources, they're downloads, and use them a lot in training packages and with individuals and families. Especially the question I mentioned of that priority rating chart and so on, because they make you stop and think. But you're right. A lot of the time, the perception and expectation levels of others is a demand. And that demand can be devastating when half an environment is desperately trying to put everything in place to help their son or daughter develop without those levels of anxiety being there, sensory issues and so on. But it is, you get it a lot. I get an awful lot. I've even got, professionals I've known very well for a long time going, look, I know this is the kind of stuff you do, but really, I don't think it exists at all. I think it's down to bad parent or bad kid. And I'm sorry, as I'm sure you will have heard that, I still hear that. And I think it's the 21st century. But I still hear that a lot, regrettably. But it is changing. And there are a lot of PDAs out there and people like the PDA Society and other societies, across the globe that are actively raising awareness and acceptance and understanding, which is so important.
It's fascinating how you put it, though. You sort of, I've got to be honest, I never really thought how every little thing, or little inverted commas, is a demand. The bed, the placement of the bed, the table being there and the chairs around it, and every little thing is amazing.
I think it's something to explore. Now, for some people, it wouldn't make a difference at all. For some people, I think the bed would be fine, the table would be fine, the food would be fine. But for some individuals, you know that it does. Yeah. You can just read it. You can see actively that person isn't wanting to do something because the demand it places upon them. And for some individuals as well, there's some amazing literature out there. There's some amazing books out there where, and one video especially where one individual describes, I could do it. It's about wearing shoes, where he says, I could wear shoes yesterday and I think I might be able to wear them tomorrow, but just now I can't. And it's the understanding of that just now I can't isn't a whim or an idea or a ploy or whatever. It's all of a sudden, I can't do this. I cannot do this. And that I think is enlightening for many individuals as well. It's as with many things, it changes, and it is that inability to completely and utterly out of that person's control. Yeah. There are some brilliant literatures out there with PDAs describing how they've done, they've done hurtful things, said hurtful things to family members, to loved ones, and they have bitterly regretted it afterwards. They still did it, but they have bitterly regretted it afterwards. It's almost like, boom, the anxiety is so immense and so huge that things are said and done that have very devastatingly hurt individuals close to people. And it's like, boom. And they recognize I didn't want to do that. I so didn't want to do it. But it's like the guy with the shoes, I wore them yesterday, yeah, and I might be able to wear them tomorrow. But at this moment in time, I can't. Can you not respect that? And that, I think, is a fascinating insight in many ways.
Yeah, yeah. I should just highlight Deborah Holmes's comment here. She's put it up a little while ago. She says, my son is undiagnosed PDA profile. I fought CAMS for 3 years alone and then got a second opinion at Scanned Maudsley. Scanned is the service for complex autism and neurological disorders, if I'm remembering correctly. So she got second opinion and it was confirmed complex autism. Any thoughts on that?
I would, if there's a certain thought process there around, demand avoidance, etc., I would go straight to the PDA Society. They have amazing professionals. She's the lady do you have a support group? Is that Deborah Holmes? Yeah.
Yeah, Deborah Holmes. Yeah.
My apologies. There is. They have a phone line. They have support groups across the country. They have amazing parents, individuals that will be able to give us some incredible advice, and certainly in and around London. And I think that's one of the best places to go. Complex autism. Come on, come on. You must hear terms like complex, low functioning, high functioning. They're still out there, and you think, wow. So I certainly would get, because what you can get then from the PDA Society is really good downloads from educational psychologists and speech and language therapists and so on, to add to these situations where you go and meet with professionals. And also there's some really good stuff there that educates professionals. There are guidebooks there for teachers, for speech and language therapists and so on, who've never heard of PDA before. And to be handed a book like that might change their outlook of a certain term they're using, to understand that the world of PDA does exist, and then develop strategies and approaches that enhance that and respond to that.
Yeah. I've got a few more comments just to go through, Tigger. Celine Rail says, absolutely no demands at the minute. The change in his school and activities routine alone was enough to raise his anxiety. And I mean, this is one of the reasons why we're having this conversation, isn't it? Is given the whole, as we've been talking about, complete shift in all rules, I suppose, as to what daily life looks like and what to expect. And changing, as you said, the change in school and activities routines alone is enough to raise his anxiety.
Yeah, well, I'm sure many of us know the example of it's been used often enough, the fizzy pop bottle, where the anxiety is there at school, and individuals come back at home, and all of a sudden the meltdowns occur and so on. There are some great educational establishments out there, and there are some that don't get PDA, who don't get autism, and therefore follow that predictable route of, you must do this, you must be here at a certain time, you must go to that classroom, you must now see this teacher, all of those demands and anxiety-laden interactions, which hugely impacts upon the individual and then the family as well. And excuse me, at this moment in time, I think if you talk about processing, we're only 3 weeks into a massive change in our lives.
Yeah.
I don't know how long it's going to go on for, but I do know it's going to go on for at least another 3 weeks, as we all do. And I think, it's a transitional point. It's a processing point that we're all going through. And I am hearing, just interestingly enough, a lot of parents are saying how they're homeschooling for the first time in ages. They're educationally doing stuff with the help of teachers from schools and so on, and they're getting a better level of learning than they've ever had before. And that's an interesting debate, I think, at the moment as well, if I may touch upon it, is the fact that a lot of parents I'm talking to at the moment saying, hey, it's great, and he or she is learning. And that, I think, will be interesting to look at once the schools do start again, because all of a sudden you're going to get, we've transitioned into this, and it's been complex and an anxiety laden for some individuals. We're also going to transition out of it at some point, and that in itself is going to be anxiety laden and full of complex issues for so many people that we know. So but no, there's some amazing schools out there. I also come into contact with a lot of schools that just don't get it from a sensory viewpoint, from an autism viewpoint, from a PDA viewpoint, and they are hugely placing the demands and therefore huge amounts of anxiety upon individuals in their settings. So it is very different at the moment.
Thanks. Yeah, fully agree. We have here a comment from Alice Brindley. She says, I'm interested to know why turning things into a race or challenge seems to help my daughter. Is this because it seems less like a demand? She is 4 and undiagnosed, but in the long process, I have an issue where how do you deal with and husband and relatives thinking that she needs to learn how to behave, such as sitting at the table for dinner, as she'll have to do it for school society. I mean, this is what we've been talking about, isn't it?
This is a really difficult one in terms of other people's expectation levels, very much so, and I get that. The race, the challenge, it's changing the whole communication process. You must do this. I want you to do this. Hey, I bet I can do that quicker than you can. Even if we do it with each other, it's fun, isn't it?
Yeah, make it into a game.
Yeah, make it a game. You still get the same result. I can remember working with a great friend of mine, and he wanted to cook one of my first PDA teachers, if I may call him that, PDA teachers. And if I'd said to him, we need to cook beans on toast tonight, he would have been like, I don't think so. Let's do this, let's do that. I don't want to. My arms don't work. All these things would have happened. Let's do a space story instead, or whatever. Well, I walked in and I went, I bet you I can make beans on toast quicker than you can. I've got a stopwatch. And he went, you're on. And it's, and I learned that over the years. Yeah. And it's because it's fun. It's because it's an indirect way of getting something. That A to B thing, A to B, we always think is a straight line. No, it doesn't have to be. You can go wiggly, 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 but you still get from A to B. And with it not being a straight line, I mean, it's less laden with demands. Yeah. But the other bit about, and I really get this, because as I said, you get sometimes one part of the family getting it and one part not. It's really difficult. And that's where, again, I go back to the PDA Society. I've often said to families, look, both watch this video, both read this book. There's some amazing titles out there. My Daughter Is Not Naughty is another brilliant book. And I've actively worked with families, and I've said, look, just read the book. Just read the book. And then a parent's come back and gone, oh, yeah, okay, I get it now. And it can be little moments like that where it's going on a website, downloaded something, watching a video. There can be pivotal moments in changing people's understanding and their expectation levels of creating a huge amount of stress for the individual that they love and live with. But it's a difficult one because, I still get it in schools. I was in a specialist environment not so long ago where one of the individuals, professionals there, said to me, I don't believe in it. I just don't believe in it. I think the kid's just naughty. And I was like, I can't believe that. And yet I've also been to environments where they're fantastic. If I can use the term, they're bent over backwards. They've been amazing in changing the environment and their communication practices to suit the needs of the individuals in the school. And they're incredible. But you still get some individuals that go, no, you've got to sit at the table. You've got to go sleep in a bed. You've got to eat this food. You've got to finish your greens. Otherwise you won't have a pudding. And it's education. I think education helps that, and that's why I always send people to the PDA Society, or even involve a dialogue with them where I can, to kind of help educate and signpost.
It's such a shame. It's just awful that, you know, there are some cases that you can come across where, you know, schools or some people within schools, you know, aren't believing in it, or they're not, you know, they're not understanding it, they're not getting it, they're not working with it. That's a real problem, isn't it? Because, you know, obviously schools are a critical place for our children's overall development and well-being, right? And so if you've got a teacher or an entire school culture and philosophy who just, you know, don't want to, you know, sort of, you know, think critically about perhaps what's going on and consider this, then, I mean, crikey, it's a bad position, isn't it? And that school does need a lot of work and intervention.
It's you know, I this is 30 years I've been lucky enough to learn and grow in this environment, and you know, people don't like this, but I worked for the Spastic Society when it was the Spastic Society, and I was there when they changed, you know, from that name to Scope.
Yeah,
and I've seen the progression, the development, and I still see it going on. So I'm a great believer in how things are changing positively. Education, sharing, and I do believe we're a much more accepting society than we have been before, along that neurodiverse line, and accepting individuals for who they are. But it's just a process of sharing, understanding, and growing. As I said, I do go to some environments and I go, wow, you are cool. Wow. You are absolutely incredibly what you do. But as I'm sure you know, you've experienced, and your listeners and followers have experienced, some environments where, you know, you meet the school's autism champion and you just sit there going, really? Because they've done a 2-hour training session and they get the tick on the box for that. But I've met some individuals that have done that and then researched so much more and get it.
But why is it some, you know, places are great and get it, and others, do you think leadership might be part of it, you know?
I think at the end of the day, you have to be accepting as an individual. I mean, I was a teacher for years. I know the pressures, you know, the work pressure you have, the attainment pressure, the goal pressure, and so on is immense. And sometimes that funnels you in what you're able to look at and explore. But if you want the best for your students, and that diverse range of students that are now in every single classroom, you've got to expand. And you go back and you think, well, where's that knowledge start? Does that knowledge start at teacher training? And you go back further, you think, well, does that knowledge start in the media? I mean, in recent, I mean, God, I can't remember when Rain Man came out. Was it the late 80s?
Yeah, something like that.
So I can remember Rain Man being, you know, if you say to somebody, I remember years ago saying I work with individuals that are awesomely autistic, and they go, oh, just like that guy on Rain Man. And I go, no. And, you know, we've grown. So I think the media's changing representation a lot. But I think sometimes you just get individuals that are more proactive than us that really explore stuff and go, oh, I want to find out more, and then realize the amazing effect it has, not just upon one student in the environment, but a lot of other students as well. And I think that's when people realize that can be a fascinating, enlightening, and growing moment. But you're right, some people just do and some people just don't.
If I could mention where my son has recently this year gone through a transition from a special needs primary school into special needs secondary school in Barnet. So the two schools, Oakley School and Mapledown School, have done a fantastic thing. That they've set up, they've partnered together with the transition process, and for throughout the year before the transition, they were taking the children on trips to the new school to get them used to the environment, to show them the layout, the classrooms, the playground, you know, where the toilet is. They had their lunch there, then they would come back once a week or something like that. You know, they would see the sensory room. Then when he went, you know, in September, he had no problem. There were, you know, the kids all went and they knew the school. They had absolutely no problem. And I think it's a shame that that's kind of been undone with what's happened with the, you know, COVID and everything. But I think it's a model that maybe everyone can kind of learn from now, that,
Oh yeah,
you know, they're going to need a big transition period to go back. You know,
yeah,
a
yeah.
lot of kids are, you know.
Yeah, very much so. And I think that's why, I mean, as with all of us, my process of thoughts are changing at the moment, because we're in such a fluid environment with regards to the world and COVID and so on. But I've been thinking a lot today about coming up to this and talking to some families today as well, and thinking we're 3 weeks in. We've got another 3 weeks at least to go. We're still transitioning in. It's going to be just as important, just as it is to visit a new school and to get used to it, to learn how to and to plan to transition out as well, to reduce anxieties, demands there, so on and so forth. But the school example is brilliant, because it is, hey, I know where I'm going. I know the people I'm going to meet. I know what the classrooms are like. I know what the food is like. I'm comfortable. And rather than have it sprung upon you on the first term in September, there's time to plan for it, which is really important and really positive. And that's really lovely to hear. And yeah, very good example. I know lots of schools that do it. I'd love every school to think about doing it, because it would make everybody's life so much easier.
Yeah. So I don't know if there's hopefully the schools somewhere will be planning, like whether there's like visuals or something like that. I don't know if there's communication difficulties like there is with my son, how we'll kind of communicate to him that he's going back and that kind of thing.
I'll say a lot of things I've shared at the moment from people like Macaton and Boardmaker and Widget and People First and Photo Symbols and so on. They're all designing stuff to help with wash your hands, you've got to stay indoors, where you go on trip. And they're really lovely visual aids and visual resources to have. So I'm sure in turn, they'll design stuff for when individuals are going back into all those different environments.
Yeah.
Celine Ryle says, not having the demands of school has given him the capacity to try a couple of foods he wouldn't have entertained historically, which is very, very interesting and really sort of, again, talks to what we've been talking about, in that, replacing or removing demands can have those additional benefits, right? In terms of coping, and then reduced anxiety through the day that might enable someone to try things, or that they may not have before.
And again, if you've got an individual that's able to communicate in a particular way, there are other like PDA. To me, there are forms you can download. Again, I know PDA Society. It gives the person the ability to say, this is what I don't like, this is what I do like, this is what raises my anxiety, this is how I like things to be worded. And again, you're collaboratively working with the individual to find a pathway of communication and get through daily activities that works for both of you. And those can be extremely beneficial as well, to get a person's insight, if they're able to, into what their world is.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think the communication aspect could be really important indeed. Yeah. Just in terms of the idea of collaboration, would you agree with perhaps parents, or whoever it is, apologizing even? We don't always get things right. I like to apologize to my children, that always sort of seems to help with the relationship, the partnership. It just reduces their perception of me as an authority person that they can oppose, and sees me more as someone on a level playing field that's with them, trying to work in partnership. And I always think that just not being afraid to apologize, and if you do feel like you've got things perhaps a little wrong, it's a very difficult game, isn't it? So you're bound to struggle.
Yeah, that bit at the beginning where I said, I've learned this, and I'll say I've learned it the hard way. Be honest. If you're able to, and I think honesty also is, I'm sorry I got that wrong. I'm really sorry I got that wrong. And it's so hard as adults to do that, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because we're not supposed to get it wrong, are we?
No.
We're supposed to be like, hey, we know everything. We're really cool. No, I get it wrong every day. Yeah. And the ability to say that to somebody is a great leveler. It's also a great amount of honesty. And that can only be beneficial in my eyes, because you're right, you take away, I'm not that authority figure you think that I am. I am a human being just like you. And let's have a race to see who can do baked beans first, or a race down the garden or whatever. Yeah. And we can work that way. It doesn't have to be me saying you must. Some things it is, you must wear those shoes because you can't go on the road without wearing shoes, or you must have a seatbelt in the car. But at other times and there's a reason why, making those demands come from other authorities and so on rather than from yourself, but also that honesty and that collaboration of being together, I think, is brilliant.
Yeah, definitely. So obviously I'm aware of time. We've been talking even though it's gone so quickly.
Wow. You were right about that.
Yeah, we did warn you about that.
Flown by.
Just to sort of sum up, perhaps, the kind of key bits of advice I think would be useful. So I'm thinking in terms of what I've heard, if you'd agree, as you said, think about what demands you should be prioritizing and deprioritizing.
Yeah.
Prioritize emotional well-being. I think.
Yes,
put that
very
first.
much so. Yeah.
And again, that ties in with the previous point, right? I mean, there are going to be many demands during the day that just, aren't going to be important in boosting emotional well-being, or in fact could reduce it. So the whole game is about emotional well-being, isn't it?
So the internal self, the emotional well-being that across the whole of the family at this moment in time as well, obviously, is really important. I mean, I wrote some stuff down, if I may. The choosing.
Please do.
Oh, yeah. The choosing priorities. How important is it that they definitely the collaboration, the discussion, the honesty. There is some issue with some individuals about praise, which I wanted to add. Praise for some individuals is a demand. That's really great. Well done, Tom. Is also, I want you to do the same thing again.
Yeah,
so
you're
there
right.
are some issues around that. I thought I'd drop that in there.
That's fascinating.
Depersonalized the request. I've done where food patterns in jelly babies has ordered what's happening during the day, or I've just put a poster on the wall. So it's not me saying this is what we're doing. The poster is changing aspects of communication that they're drama, fantasy, role playing, that kind of stuff is awesome. I can't tell you the amount of times I've been a spaceman or a monster or a World War I aircraft pilot just to make, and I've done that to make the day work better. Sensory issues, yes. Processing time for both of you, yes. Or for all of you, I think that's important. Thinking outside the box, I love. Having a plan A and B and C and D are often really useful. And that bit from going to A to B, it doesn't have to be a straight line. That straight line is such a demand upon all of you. Go wiggly waggly, but you still get to B. It's just not so demand laden or confrontational. So I think that, the communication aspects are really important. And I think, if you see a demand that is causing issues, reduce it, get rid of it. Sensory stuff, please look at it. Communication, we always think of speech. Does it have to be speech? It can be sticky notes or a bit on a computer or a YouTube clip. But also that you mentioned emotional resilience and understanding and so on. Empower, support the individual. At a certain age, we develop that inner voice where we can say, I feel like this, maybe, or I like it if you do that. We often, don't have those conversations in our lives, and they're so important. And make it fun. I often say to people that the hardest times I've ever had sometimes have been in my early years when I was first working with PDAs and they were educating me. And yet I'll conversely say some of the best times of my life, some of the most fun I've ever had, some of the most amazing things I've ever done, I've been working with and learning from awesome PDAs that I've had the chance to spend time with and to learn from. I'll be, whether or not it gets in those manuals one day soon, those manuals will be great to see if it does. But people like the PDA Society in the UK and other societies across the globe are really raising awareness. And though I've mentioned some stuff and added on to yours, please do go to the PDA Society website. It's free. There is loads of excellent videos, books, resources, downloadable information that can be incredibly important to you, to family, to school, to other family members and to the individual themselves. But a lot of it is, I like the collaboration a lot. It doesn't have to be you must do this, that making it fun, making it a collaborative approach, being honest with each other, reducing demands, the sensory-based stuff. They can all pay huge dividends during the day. And what is really important is to have a great day. Not that you must sit at the table or you must go to bed under that quilt cover. It's have a great day. And those are the things I often look at, really.
Absolutely fantastic. Thank you so much. That's so insightful, and I think really, really important, particularly in the current situation we all find ourselves in. Really, really learned a lot listening to you. Thank you, Tigger.
Thank you very much indeed.
James, anything you want to add?
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you, Tigger. Especially around sleep issues, which we get asked in our Facebook group a lot. I'm mostly able to tell the people the same thing, because I learned through my son the same thing, where things got really, really bad. The more demands I put on him, like, and the worse he got, and the later bedtime became. But as soon as I realized that it was a sensory issue around being in a dark room, taking away, depriving him of all the sensory things that he needed, because he's a hyposensitive. So, it means he needs that sensory input not to have anxiety and things like that. So he goes to sleep. You can probably see him behind me. He's asleep on the couch. It's a bright room. He's got his TV on quietly, but he goes to sleep every night like this. And then I sort of get him up in an hour or two and walk him into bed, and he's fine. He sleeps much better now. So it's about I think the whole thing is about giving them respect that they deserve, and realizing their human rights, and giving them the sense of personal freedom, so that they don't have to be pushing back all the time.
And I'd like to add as well, there's PDA as an awesome group of individuals have been massively important and educational to me. There are great YouTubers out there and Facebook individuals. Can I send you stuff you could share on your Facebook page? Well, I'd very happily do that.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. There's people like Harry Thompson and Sally Cat and Julia Dawn and others that are incredibly leading this world on understanding the PDA, because of their insight is fantastic. And over the past 2 or 3 years, they have incredibly educated me into having a much deeper understanding of the awesome world of PDA. And they're incredibly awesome human beings themselves, as most PDAs are, as all human beings are, really. But I'm happy to send you stuff, to send you links, to send you the documents I've spoken about, the books I've spoken about, to share with your individuals you have around that part of London and so on, to do as much help as I can. Really, just ask. I'll send you tons of stuff. I'm terrible, really.
Sounds brilliant. Sounds brilliant. Maybe I'll put them on our website and things like that.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
Well, thanks again, Tigger. It's absolutely been amazing talking with you. And again, thanks for your time and your insight today, and also all of the incredible work you've done over the years. It's really inspirational.
I'm learning all the time, and I love it. I'm so lucky to be able to learn and to rethink and to regrow all the time. I'm really, really lucky to do that. But thank you so much for giving me a chance to talk on here and to meet you too in person, so to speak, rather than in the virtual world. I've seen you before. And again, all the awesome stuff you're doing up there is incredible. And I'm certainly looking at a few things you're doing and thinking I might, adopt a few of your ideas and thoughts of the awesome Can Do Call, because what you're doing is absolutely fantastic.
Oh, that's very kind of you to say. And we're always open to collaboration.
Absolutely. That's cool.
Yeah. All right. So I will sign off. And thanks again. And take care of yourself as well, Tigger.
And you all. Thank you so much. Be safe and take care.
Thank you, Tigger.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
That's right. Bye.
Bye.